I'm Jessica Mockett with Perfect Bonds here. Today I want to talk about the introduction into raw feeding. Our kitty cats are classified as obligate carnivores, which means they need to eat meat. We have a culture right now that is putting some pressure on our kitty cats to be more vegan, vegetarian at least, and that's not really possible for our kitty cats. I'm sure there's people who would argue against that, but when I'm looking at their optimal health and well-being, they really need to have high quality protein and fats in their diet in order to create all of the essential amino acids within their body, protein building amino acids. Raw feeding is as close as we can get to what the cat would eat in nature. Obviously, there are some differences and changes when we bring animals into our lives and we domesticate them, but the cat has not evolved that much since domestication. In fact, they go wild really fast. It just takes a single generation of kittens raised away from humans for them to be completely feral. For our kitty cats, having them on at least a partial raw food diet will really help strengthen their bodies and give them optimal wellness and healing. And if you're working with me, I frequently coach my clients to look at their nutrition, analyze it, and improve it. Even feeding a partial raw food diet will strengthen your kitty's immune system. The gut, the digestive tract, makes up about 70% of our immune system, and that's true for kitty cats. If they have good gut health, good nutrition, good nutrition absorption, then they have more wellness. And with more wellness comes less behavioral concerns. A lot of time people treat them as completely separate things. Your cat is sick, and you deal with that with the veterinarian over here, and your cat has a behavior problem, so you deal with that with a consultant like myself or somebody else. There's so much crossover as a cat behavior professional and someone who cares about things holistically. I recognized that early on, and I wanted to bridge that gap. Part of that is with nutrition. Sometimes the raw feeding isn't financially feasible, and I get that, but there's usually a way to start slowly incorporating it over time so it doesn't hit your budget really hard. And if you absolutely can't do that, then I help coach my clients into selecting higher grade commercial foods. I'm really not big on homemade diets. The reason for that is that it's really easy for us as humans to reach burnout when feeding our cats. I'm guilty of that myself. There's a lot of raw food options out there, commercially made, and that is what I recommend. Homemade diets can be really tricky to keep safe, as well as keeping yourself engaged in creating it and not falling into a rut of one protein and a few supplements. Sometimes people run out of a supplement and they don't replace it, months go by, etc. So I really recommend commercially made raw food diets because they're less risky. If you've got a brand that's a quality brand, it should be really safe. So let's just talk briefly about different types of raw food diets. So there's something out there called the barf diet, which is kind of funny with cats because they barf so much. So the BARF diet, it stands for biologically available raw food. And this diet is not 100% meat and bone. It's not a whole prey diet, and we'll talk about that. So it consists of predominantly protein, usually 60 to 70%, 65 to 70%. Focus on protein and fat that's in the protein, and that's a raw protein. And then there's nuts and vegetables and fruits, herbs that are in the diet. And those can be really great for dogs. Kitty cats, I'm usually on the side of PMR. Prey model raw diets are more for our obligate carnivores. There's no added carbohydrates in it, and kitty cats don't really need carbohydrates. They're built to maybe have about 10% carbohydrates in their diet. In the wild, that would just come from stomach contents of the animals they eat, as well as potentially from grasses or those kinds of things they might nibble on. The PMR diet, the prey model raw, is 80% protein, and that's including the fat. So it's the protein with the fat, and then it's 10% organ meat and 10% bone, and that is raw bone not cooked bone. It's ground up and it presents the whole diet that a cat really needs. Now, if you're concerned, a lot of the commercial raw food diets also add the supplements that meet the AAFCO's requirements. That's the organization that is in charge of minimal nutritional quality for our animals, both domestic and farm animals. There's also whole prey raw feeding. This is like a duck or a rabbit that's in its form still, and this is better for larger dogs, and it's really messy, so it's better to do outside. If you're feeding a kitty cat, I mean an indoor kitty cat, I'd stick to the PMR because it's easier and cleaner. But there is some benefit in actually allowing a cat or a dog handle prey and eat it and consume it that way. I think there's some emotional stimulation there and mental stimulation there, not just nutritional. High pressure processing or high pressure pasteurization is what happens to our freeze-dried raw foods. You know, some people who are really strict to natural don't want you to give HPP foods. I give HPP foods to my kitty cats. It's a great thing to have on hand. It's a great thing to mix into a kibble to reduce the amount of kibble and add higher quality nutrition. You can reconstitute it with water, or you can just make sure that your cats are drinking enough water if this is what you're giving them. It's also a really good option if you've got immune compromised kitty cats, FIV, FELV, a cat that's cancerous, has recently been through chemotherapy or radiation, anywhere where the immune system has been suppressed. And that could be if they recently had steroid shots, the immune system will be a little bit suppressed. So for me, there is a place for the HPP freeze-dried raw foods, especially when you're looking at kitty cats that are at higher risk with their immune systems, meaning that they're not as capable as a normal cat in fighting off the potential excess of bacteria, like Salmonella or E. coli. Those sound like scary things. These are things that are normally in your carnivore's tummy. It's when it becomes too much for their immune system to handle, when it becomes an infection or a problem. Okay, so the AAFCO that I referred to already, that is the Association of American Feed Control Officials, just so you know. And it's really a minimal standard. It is not a super standard when it comes to feeding our animals. Like for instance, with kitty cats, taurine is not considered an AAFCO requirement, or at least it hasn't been in the past, as well as they don't make a requirement to list the percentage of carbohydrates on cat food. And cats really don't need a lot of carbohydrates, and if you there's a way to figure out what the carbohydrate content is estimated within the foods, and it's really common for kibble to be 40%, 45%, 50%, even 55% carbohydrate. And so if you're only doing a kibble diet for your cat, one, they're probably a little bit dehydrated at all times, and two, they're receiving way too many carbohydrates for them. It's just not meant for them. Yes, they can technically process it, but what does it bring to them nutritionally? Okay. So let's go over some tips for raw feeding. Keep it frozen until you're ready to use it. So it should arrive on your doorstep frozen. I personally use Viva Raw for my kitty cats. It comes in 1 pound packages, which is easier for me to deal with my cats because cats are smaller. I'm gonna do a demo here in a second on how to thaw and prep your 1 pound packages of meat for your kitty cats. You can defrost it and refreeze it one time. And that defrost it's best done in the refrigerator, but it can be on the counter. If you're watching it, don't leave it on the counter, walk away, and 10 hours later come back to it. That's a problem. The refrigeration and the freezing are obviously keeping bacteria growth at bay. We're gonna do a demo of using ice cube trays to portion out 1 or 1.5 ounce portions of the raw food and refreezing it so that it's easy to pop out and thaw those smaller pieces as you need them. Hey, can you not? Come here, you. Oh, thanks. That's a great cue for the audience. Sit there. Sit. So we are just going to be using these ice cube trays. They are marked at 1 ounce, and I think they're 1.5 ounce when full. And they have lids that fit on them like so. I've got my Viva Raw, and it's thawed. We thawed it already. So we've got our duck and our rabbit. Honey is here to monitor what we're doing. And then I'm just gonna take portions like so and squish them into our container. And it's still pretty cold and partially frozen, which is ideal. Just need it thawed enough to be able to cut into it. Okay, and then I will leave out a couple of portions to start with. And these I'll just put in a glass container and stick in the fridge for use. And then those go in the freezer. If you're freezing ice cube trays, use the meat that you've frozen within those trays in 1 to 2 weeks. If you let it go longer than that, it starts to oxidize, it starts to get freezer burn, it starts to absorb the flavors of the freezer, and then it's less appealing to the cat. We know that cats tend to be picky, so we want to make sure that it's as palatable as possible. Once it's thawed and it's in your container in the refrigerator, you have to use it within 2 to 3 days. 2 days is best, 3 days is pushing it, but 2 to 3 days. You don't have to do 100% raw food. Incorporating 25% raw food into your cat's diet will really give them a boost nutritionally and help them if they've got health problems, behavioral problems. Just giving them a nutritional boost is important. And then working up to where you're gonna stop. So whether that's 25% or 50% or all the way up to 100%. Just take that transition over time with your kitty cat. You can mix the raw food into kibble. You can mix it into canned food. You can mix it into bone broth, just as long as it's safe for kitties to consume. There's a lot of ways that you can start to incorporate raw food into the cat's diet, and we always want to do a very slow transition. It's really common for it to take 2, 3, 4 months for a cat to really begin to transition onto raw food successfully. It's just, they need time, so you have to be patient about the transition. If your cat is used to a canned food diet, it's a great way to incorporate raw food. You literally take, if you're gonna give a 2 ounce serving of canned food, substitute in, you know, maybe a teaspoonful of raw food and mix it in really well. And that will be a slow introduction to the raw, so it's 90% what they're used to, 10% something new. And if they're eating that and accepting that, then you want to go to 15 to 20%, which might be 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of raw mixed in. So you're just slowly building up over time. If you just slap down raw food in front of them, they are not likely to eat it, and then you might feel like, oh, they're never going to eat it. That's why we have to take a very slow transition, because it takes them time to accept something new, whether it's texture, flavor, temperature. They have to adjust to it over time. If your blood drains away from your food in the container in the fridge, make sure you scoop up that blood and put it back into the food when you're serving it. The less oxygen exposure to your raw food, the better, because it starts to oxidize and turn brown. It's not that it's gone bad, it's just not as fresh. So just watch out for that. Another thing to think about when you're feeding raw food is your kitty dishes. Now, some people are really good about always putting down a fresh kitty dish no matter what when they're serving up wet food or kibble. Some people aren't. Some people will leave the dish down for days and days and just, you know, continue to put food into it. With the raw food, that pattern of just leaving it down and continuing to use it becomes more dangerous. You need to make sure that your raw food is, the dishes are washed after every serving. You can leave the raw food down for a few hours. With the raw food, again, we're concerned about bacteria growth. We want to make sure that we're not taking those risks. Another thing to consider when you are moving into raw feeding is calories. You want to make sure that you're getting enough calories into kitty. A good thing to do is to find a vet calculator online and put in their weight and their body condition score, and then it will tell you a resting energy requirement, RER, or the minimal energy requirement if they're more active. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough calories into our cat with this. So most cats are around 200 to 250 calories a day if they're around the 10-pound mark and they're healthy body weight. Let's make sure that they are getting the appropriate calories. Most raw food 1 ounce servings is between 30 to 50 calories per 1 ounce. But you don't need to check that. It varies depending on protein. Obviously beef is going to be higher than chicken, or pork is going to be higher than turkey, but you just need to understand what the calorie content is per ounce and how much you're feeding per day, and then you have to compensate for the kibble that you're giving or the canned food that you're giving. What's the calorie content there? We want to move to healthier body weights and healthier immune systems and more wellness overall by making this transition. Okay, hopefully this has helped you. If you have any questions, if you're a client of mine, obviously you can reach out. If you'd like to work with me, please reach out. I've also left a Viva Raw link. I am an affiliate, but that's the brand that I have chosen to use. I've tried a handful and my cats like it the most. So I will leave that recommendation and we'll see you next time.